Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers. I'm Abdurrahim Kashour, and coming up next in our news program. The UN Refugee Agency said Thursday that 1 million people have now fled Ukraine since Russia's military operation launched last week. Several huge blasts have rocked Ukraine's capital Kiev overnight, hours after Russian forces claimed to have succeeded in taking over the first major city in the military operation of the country. The United Nations General Assembly has voted overwhelmingly to condemn Russia's military operation over Ukraine. The resolution demanded an immediate halt to offensive and the withdrawal of all Russian troops. Despite heavy Russian shelling, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukraine's hands. Some Russian forces have entered the city of Kherson, but the military situation remains unclear. Hello again and welcome to Al24 World Latest, beginning our news bulletin over the latest in Ukraine. Russian forces take the Black Sea city of Kherson in the southern Ukraine, a significant victory for Moscow after a string of military delays. Russian forces also surround Mariupol, where terrifying fighting is reported. Ukraine media says that several massive explosions have been heard in the capital Kiev, triggering air raid sirens amid fighting on the outskirts of the capital. More than 1 million people have fled Ukraine following Russia's military operations and the swiftest refugee migration this century, the United Nations said on Thursday.
According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, 1 million people had fled Ukraine since Russia started the military operation less than a week ago. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, more than 2% of Ukrainians' population, 44 million at the end of 2020, according to the World Bank, is one move across borders in just 7 days. The agency warns that the outflows are not yet complete. It has been estimated that as many as 4 million people could leave Ukraine in the future, that this figure could be revised upward.
Our data indicates we passed the 1 million mark.
UN High Commissioner Philip Grandi remarks reflected Ukrainians' desperation as artillery fire explode in mortars across the country, as well as growing concerns within the United Nations system at agencies like the World Health Organization and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs.
In just 7 days, we have witnessed the exodus of 1 million refugees from Ukraine to neighboring countries.
The daily statistics reveal the evacuation's breakneck speed according to the latest UNHCR tally, after more than 82,000 individuals departed on the first day of the Russian military operation on February 24. Each subsequent day saw at least 170,000 more refugees, with a peak of nearly 200,000 on Tuesday alone.
The Ukrainian port city of Mariupol is suffering mass casualties and water outages, and it defends itself from non-stop onslaughts by the Russian forces. Mayor Vadim Poshenko said in a live broadcast on Ukrainian TV on Wednesday. He said that the occupying forces of the Russian Federation have done everything to block the exit of civilians from the city of 500,000 people. He did not provide an exact casualty figure. At least 4 people, or rather 4 explosions, were reported in the quick succession in Kiev at around 2 a.m. local time. Earlier, a Russian airstrike hit near Kiev's southern main railway station at around 7 p.m. local time. Reports said that it comes as thousands continue to flee Ukraine's capital a week since Putin launched his deadly military operation. The UN General Assembly have voted to demand that Russia stop its operation in Ukraine and withdraw all troops. Ukraine, like the European Union and multiple nations, voted in favor of a resolution. China abstained, with Russia denounced the unprecedented pressure on the world. Hussein Berkan.
The result of the vote is as follows.
The UN General Assembly voted at an emergency session Wednesday to demand an immediate halt to Moscow's operation on Ukraine and the withdrawal of all Russian troops. The vote on the resolution about Russia's operation in Ukraine was 141 to 5, with 35 abstentions, including China and India. Sergei Kozlitsy, a Ukrainian ambassador to the UN, described the resolution as a wall that will protect all Europeans and the future generations from atrocities of war.
The draft resolution is one of the building blocks to build a wall, the wall that will protect all of you, in particular, younger generations.
In turn, Russian ambassador to the UN Vasily Nebenzia denounced the unprecedented pressure the West is exerting on a large number of countries to vote against Russia.
Russia asked for its draft resolution to be put to the vote, and we call on you not to support it. However, we are aware of the unprecedented pressure that our Western partners are exerting on a large number of countries. They urge them to vote as they see fit. It's not something you can call pressure. It's overt and underhanded threats. We know that.
Unlike Security Council resolutions, General Assembly resolutions are not legally binding, but they do have a clout in reflecting international opinion.
Russian military operation on Ukraine's territories enters its seventh day as major cities of Ukraine witness heavy fighting. Irregular bombing on most populated cities of Ukraine continues with field battles and stiff resistance by Ukrainian forces, which are centered in the capital, Kiev. Osama Ayadi.
In the days since Russian troops began their military operation last Thursday, clashes have intensified in several major Ukrainian cities, prompting hundreds of thousands of people to flee the country in search of safety. Ukrainian officials say deaths and injuries are mounting as Russian forces launch renewed attacks and an enormous military convoy edges closer to the capital Kiev, while Russia announced that over 4,000 soldiers were killed in the operation. Ukrainian authorities denied Russia's claim it had captured the Black Sea port of Kherson on Wednesday, the seventh day of its military action, while Russian artillery massed outside the capital Kiev, raising fears of intensifying the crisis.
We're a nation that broke the enemy's plans in a week. Plans written for years, sneaky, full of hatred for our country and our people.
Kherson's mayor Igor Nikolaev said the city remained under his control but was surrounded, soon after Russian authorities declared that the city was under their control. In Kiev, a city of nearly 3 million people, sirens wailed repeatedly after dark, and at least one heavy explosion shook buildings. Defenders braced for an expected advancement of the Russian military, erecting makeshift barricades from branches, cinder blocks and vehicles, stockpiling ammunition and establishing lookouts.
Despite the fact that they are tens of times more numerous than us, the morale of the enemy is deteriorating. More and more occupiers are fleeing towards Russia.
Some of the most harrowing scenes of the military operation have emerged in Kharkiv, where blasts in recent days have devastated the city's central square and other populated areas. Ukrainian officials said that more deadly strikes occurred Wednesday, with witnesses reporting explosions that shattered building facades and lit up the cityscape with fireballs.
The Ukrainian regional police in Donetsk started an operation to evacuate civilians, mostly women and children, from the small town of Volonvaka, which is under the shelling of Russian troops. According to the head of Donetsk Regional Military Administration, Pavel Kirilenko, the enemy, in his words, is actually leveling the city to the ground. He added that there is no water, electricity, gas in the village. Local residents sit in basements and shelters. Police in Russia's second biggest city, St. Petersburg, have arrested at least 350 anti-war protesters on Wednesday. Multiple videos showed that police arrested people holding anti-war and anti-nuclear signs, which protests shared and uploaded. At least 7,650 people have been detained in anti-war protests in Russia since last Thursday, according to the OVD info. In Uruguay, hundreds demonstrated against Russia's military operation in Ukraine with applause, horns and songs for peace outside the Russian embassy in Montevideo. Members of the Ukrainian community and supporters take part in this demonstration.
We must support the freedom of all the peoples and ward off totalitarian imperialism, especially in foreign countries. We cannot allow a country to be invaded, a country to have its freedom violated. Otherwise, we will set a precedent and world peace will be at stake. That is why I'm here today to support Ukraine.
Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court (ICC) has said that he will immediately continue with an investigation into potential war crimes in Ukraine, dating back to 2013 when protests against a pro-Russian administration in Kiev erupted. Karim Al-Khan, the ICC chief prosecutor, announced late Wednesday that the inquiry had begun after 39 countries, including Canada and France, petitioned the court to open an investigation. Gunshots were heard during the protests in the Ukrainian town of Melitopol. Protesters were chanting "Melitopol is Ukraine" and waving Ukrainian flags. The crowd continued marching toward Russian soldiers while chanting. Soldiers then ran for cover behind a nearby building.
Стояли, тут четверо связало их.
Мелітополь, виходь зараз.
The head of the American diplomacy, Antony Blinken, announced during a press briefing that he will travel in the coming days to Poland, Moldova, and Baltic states to reaffirm Washington's support for Ukraine. The Secretary of State will first stop in Brussels for meetings with the counterparts from the European Union and NATO countries to discuss the global response to Russia's military operations in Ukraine. Blinken denounced Russia President Vladimir Putin's provocative rhetoric about nuclear weapons, the height of irresponsibility, according to him.
But if Russia pulls back and pursues diplomacy, we stand ready to do the same thing. Meanwhile, our intensive diplomacy with allies and partners continues. From there, I'll travel to Poland, which is already hosting hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees, with tens of thousands arriving by the day. And then to Moldova, which is also hosting Ukrainian refugees, and where Russian troops have been occupying territory against the will of the people for years. And then I'll go on to the Baltic countries, to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, which are facing a renewed threat from Russia themselves.
The Kremlin acknowledged today that the Russian economy is taking serious blows as the result of sanctions imposed by the West. This came after a question about a comment made by President Biden during Tuesday night's State of the Union address. More in this report.
Russia's economy was estimated to have grown by 4.5% last year, after having shrunk by almost 3% in 2020, the worst year of the pandemic for the global economy. Today, the country's financial system is in danger as foreign energy and technology firms are flocking away in disapproval of the military operation against Ukraine. Apple, Ford, and Airbus join the list of companies shutting down or suspending their operations in Russia in response to its military operation against Ukraine. A Kremlin spokesperson on Wednesday said that the Russian economy was taking serious blows amid sanctions imposed by foreign governments.
Russia's economy is experiencing serious blows, but there is a certain margin of safety. There is potential, there are some plans, and work is underway.
On Tuesday, Biden said that Russia's economy is reeling and Putin alone is to blame. And the US has also imposed other sanctions, including kicking certain Russian banks out of SWIFT, a major international banking system. It also promised to impose measures to prevent the Russian central bank from undermining sanctions.
We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights.
The president also asserted that the sanctions in place against Russia thus far contributed to a 30% loss in the value of the ruble, and the Russian stock market losing 40% of its value in less than a week. In other words, Western sanctions appear to have an immediate and noticeable effect on Russia's economy, and there could be more to come.
Sources revealed that the Biden administration intention to monitor the implementation of the imposition of sanctions imposed on Russia, noting that the U.S. administration will hold any country that does not respect international sanctions accountable, and that it will be subject to the imposition of sanctions. On the other hand, the United States accused Russia of waging an all-out war on media freedom and truth by blocking independent media outlets and preventing Russians from hearing about this military action in Ukraine. Even though oil prices have surged to 10 years highs, a powerful cartel of oil-producing countries say they will only increase their output by a modest amount. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, led by the Russia known as OPEC Plus, will not turn on the tapes. The 23-country-strong cartel will add 400,000 barrels of oil per day to the market from April. OPEC Plus released a statement attributing the recent rise in prices to market volatility caused by current geopolitical tensions, and stated that there was no shortage of supplies in the market. In an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the question of sovereignty over Crimea is not for discussion, as it is part of Russia. Lavrov said that Russian conditions for the settlement by recognizing the republics of Lugansk and Donetsk from the administrative borders and determine the future of the border with Ukraine according to parameters that must be agreed upon, so they not allow the presence of any weapons that threaten Russia's security.
We have to be realistic. Crimea is not for discussion. President Putin clarified our position multiple times, and the same position had been transmitted to the negotiations with Ukrainians in Belarus. Crimea is a part of Russia, recognizing the republics of Donetsk and Luhansk along their borders. Also, delineation of borders within parameters that must be agreed upon, so there won't be any arms that threaten Russia's security.
A rare special session of the United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly approved the resolution condemning Russia's military operation in Ukraine. The resolution, which was supported by 141 members of 193-member Assembly on March 2nd, calls on Russia to end its operation in Ukraine immediately and evacuate all its forces from Ukraine territory. In the city of Lviv, thousands of Ukrainian volunteers are working day and night to unload tons of donations from all over Ukraine and several EU countries to help the Ukrainian army. The details in this report.
In this town of Lviv, at the Arts Palace, volunteers from all over Ukraine are preparing aid convoys bound for conflict zones. Less than a week from the Russian military operation, this spontaneous effort aims to help displaced and desperate people inside Ukraine.
The humanitarian headquarters has been functioning for 7 days. That is, only 2 to 3 hours after the start of the shelling by the Russian occupation forces. This headquarters has already been created and financed at the level of the regional council and administration.
Volunteers are working against the clock to pack and drive as much aid into the country as they can. This town became a hub for humanitarian personnel, aid flights and convoys. All signs point to a protracted crisis in western Ukraine.
Yesterday, for example, we sent about 50 buses full of aid to different places because we had started delivering to regional centers. Also yesterday, we sent 40 tons of humanitarian cargo to Odessa and about 10 tons, if I remember correctly, in Kherson and Kiev as well.
Late into the night, donations of clothes, food, water and diapers, toys, everything keep coming, and Ukrainians stuck in conflict zones need urgent support. And people like Kijak are taking matters into their own hands.
I had this thought the moment I woke up on the first day of the war and martial law was announced across the country, that everyone must be helpful, when there is a risk that our country may no longer exist soon. And my mission here is to be of service to the people who are fighting there.
There was a need for clothes, and we started collecting clothes all over Lviv through the Plast organization and to help our friends on the front lines all over Ukraine.
It's been a while now, and many Ukrainians like Sam still couldn't believe that their country is going through this tough situation. Nevertheless, they are here for the country, they say.
In Lviv it was very weird. We couldn't believe it at first. We thought it was a movie. But now we've got together, we are stronger. And when our army wins more and more victories, it gives us courage. We want it even more. We work 17 hours a day.
A growing number of Ukrainians motivated, they say, to stay in their homeland despite all odds. Ordinary Ukrainians in extraordinary circumstances are all driving hope to be useful and help their homeland.
Roman Abramovich has confirmed his intention to sell Chelsea amid Russia's continued military operation in Ukraine. Chelsea boss in a statement said, "I would like to address the speculation in media over the past few days in relation to my ownership of Chelsea FC. As I have stated before, I have always taken decisions with the club's best interests at heart in the current situation. I have therefore taken the decision to sell the club." And concerning this matter, the Labour leader Keir Starmer and asked Boris Johnson why Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich has not been included in current Russia sanctions. The Prime Minister replied that it would not be appropriate for the government to discuss individual cases.
Speaker, Roman Abramovich is the owner of Chelsea Football Club and various other high-value assets in the United Kingdom. He's a person of interest to the Home Office because of his links to the Russian state and his public association with corrupt activity and practices. Last week, the Prime Minister said that Abramovich is facing sanctions. He later corrected the record to say that he isn't. Well, why on earth isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, it's not appropriate for me to comment on individual cases at this stage. But what I can say, and I stand, Mr. Speaker, by what I've said in the House and what we've put on the record. But be in no doubt that the actions that we've already taken, that this House has already taken, are having an effect in Moscow. And by exposing the ownership of properties of companies in the way that we are, by sanctioning 275 individuals, already a further 100 last week, the impact is being.
A Western intelligence report said that senior Chinese officials told senior Russian officials in early February not to start this military operation in Ukraine before the end of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, according to senior Biden administration officials and European officials. The report indicates that Chinese spokesperson had some level of direct knowledge about Russia's war plans or even intentions before the military operation started last week. However, different intelligence services had varying interpretation, and it's not clear how widely the information was shared. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. The UN Refugee Agency said Thursday that 1 million people have now fled Ukraine since Russia's military operation launched last week. Several huge blasts have rocked Ukraine's capital Kiev overnight, hours after Russian forces claimed to have succeeded in taking over the first major city in this military action. The United Nations General Assembly had voted overwhelmingly to condemn Russia's military operation over Ukraine. The resolution demanded an immediate halt to the offensive and withdrawal of Russian troops. Despite heavy Russian shell in the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remains in Ukraine's hands. Some Russian forces have entered the city of Kherson, but the military situation remains unclear. That's all the information we have got so far, so stay tuned for better information. See you and have a blessed evening.